And before calling the next one, just letting you know, folks, that we will be ending at 7:30 this evening. So plan your evening accordingly and your time here. Thank you. With that, FS19, Steve.
Steve Thomas, representing Colorado chapter. We're having a serious problem around the country figuring out where does an exterior wall go? What is the continuity of the exterior wall? Where does it stop? Where does it stop? Every other wall assembly in the code has language regarding continuity. Firewalls, fire barriers, fire partitions, the whole bit. So the intent of our change here is to provide language to determine what that continuity is. We modeled the continuity after, I think we did fire partitions, just to kind of start with the language, and then of course, fixed it and molded it to fit with the exterior walls. And so that's the intent of our change. There was a couple of people that have contacted me and said, hey, I've got some question. So I'd like to, I've got two modifications, but I'd like to start out with moving Thomas 3. Thomas 3.
Yes, Thomas 3 will be ruled in order.
Wait for it to come up.
There we are. Scroll. Some more to it.
Scroll down a little bit. Yeah, there's a little more to it. There we go.
Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
First part is that we deleted the term foundation or, because we're really worried about that first 10, 12 inches. We're talking primarily wood construction here. The first 10 or 12 inches of the building, and so we took the foundation down. Didn't make a lot of sense there. And then we had a lot of discussion about the item number 2, because the initial one says it has to add that the floor that you terminate at. So you would take this, say you're doing platform framing, and you terminate at the rated floor. It would have to have the same rating as the exterior wall. We looked at type 3 construction. That would mean that you'd have to do a 2-hour floor. And so we thought that was a little over restrictive, so we pulled it back and just said it has to be at least a 1-hour fire resisted rated floor.
Steve, a question.
Yes, sir.
Why would not the first 12 inches be important if it was wood frame?
Because typically you're going to have, the fire is going to be above that point from protection from building to building. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, there's an exception that allows you to have foundation vents in that exterior wall within the 12 inches of the grade.
Thank you.
Question, what if there's no floor/ceiling assembly below? Then where do you start?
I guess you would start at you're talking like a knee wall or something like that? Okay. Trying to picture what you're talking about. No floor? I guess you'd start at the lowest part of the building there, and if you want to say foundation, I guess you'd say foundation.
Okay, thank you.
Question, Steve.
Yes, sir.
When you delete the word foundation, the way the sentence now says exterior wall shall extend from the top of the floor assembly. So usually when you extend, you go up, not downward. So how do I go upward from there?
You extend from, right?
Right.
The floor ceiling assembly to up. I mean, so this is the same language we use in all the other fire assemblies. So that's all I try to do is be consistent. Okay.
Question? Yeah, right.
Yes, sir.
Here, Steve. So one of the things that's different on an exterior wall is a roof that's over a certain slope is not an exterior wall. And so you could have a situation where the roof comes up
30
to
degrees.
a beam and then the exterior wall goes up from the beam. So it's not coming up from the floor. How would this work for that?
The same way it's done right now, the building official would make something up.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Sorry. That's the way it is.
Further questions, Mr. Longo?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Okay. Further testimony in support of the modification?
Dave Collins, American Institute of Architects. I'm from Cincinnati. We have hills, and I thought Colorado did too. So I was a little surprised at the fact that the foundation in Cincinnati could be 12, 15 feet high, as much as an exterior wall would be. And I know we happen to use wood foundations down there ever so often as well. And so I assumed that that portion of the exterior wall of the building would also want to be fire rated the same. So I had encouraged him to remove the word foundation so we would have that level of continuity.
Thank you. Further testimony and support. Paul?
Paul Coates, American Wood Council. We particularly think that the second part of that modification helps this change, especially in type 3 construction. It makes it practical, and then make it, without that second part of the modification especially, it would make it very difficult to have a type 3A or 3B where you've got the rated or unrated floor coming into the 2-hour rated wall. So thank you.
Thank you. Further testimony in support of the modification. Opposition to the modification? Larry?
Larry Wainwright, SPCA. The main problem I've got with this one is the first sentence there now says shall extend from the top of the floor ceiling assembly. A floor ceiling assembly is one thing. It's not two different things. It's not a floor or a ceiling. It's a floor ceiling assembly. So if you're talking about from the lowest level, it's got to be a foundation or something of that effect. It can't be the floor ceiling assembly. I'm assuming that would be at the top of the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Further opposition to the modification?
Amber Armstrong, City of Norman, representing myself. I kind of have the same question. Where I'm from, we have slab on grade. We don't have a floor ceiling as our first floor. So to me, this would say that the first floor would not have a rating, only above the first floor.
Thank you. Further opposition? Steve?
Yeah, Steve Scalco for the Masonry Alliance for Codes and Standards, and I got to admit I'm speaking in opposition to the code change as well as the amendment, but especially the amendment because of what the proponents have said, of those in support of it. So if you have a type 3 building, exterior walls required to be 2-hour rated, so that lo and behold, with this amendment, you've got that 2-hour wall coming down and stopping at a 1-hour rated floor system. And then from there down, it doesn't tell you what to do. So in my mind, that kind of creates an inconsistency in the code instead of solving a problem. It makes more sense that we've always talked about when we deal with exterior walls, they extend from the foundation and then continue on up. And you never know what's going to happen on the interior part of the building with regard to that foundation wall. But there's no reason not to consider that the fire rating should be consistent all the way from the foundation up. I speak against the modification and against the proposal.
Thank you. Further opposition?
Steve, question.
Steve?
So when you say extend all the way up, you're saying extend all the way up to the roof line?
Yeah, assuming it's required for that reason, yeah.
Question.
Yep.
Steve, you said it extends from the foundation all the way up, but in a wedding cake type building, the exterior wall could extend from the floor and the beam all the way up, and then the building gets wider down below.
Yes, it can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further opposition? Rebuttal in support of the modification.
If the committee chooses to keep the words foundation or in the initial code change, I'm okay with that. My thing is we really need to get something in the code to give something to the building departments on how to figure this out. Right now, we're getting all kinds of stuff out there. We're getting gypboard in the area between the joists and all kinds of stuff. So we need something.
Further rebuttal in support of the modification? Oh, somebody's moving. All right. They're not heading that direction. Rebuttal in opposition to the modification? Seeing no one come forward, back to the original proposal. You had 55 seconds on the clock, Steve.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to move Thomas 2.
I find that modification to be not in order.
That's why I did 2 modifications. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We're back to the original proposal. Steve, did you still had?
I'm fine.
Okay. Further testimony in support of the original proposal. Opposition to the original proposal, Paul?
Paul Coates, American Wood Council. We agree that this is a difficult area. We have another code change coming up that we can discuss, but without the modification, the item 2 would be very restrictive in terms of type 3 construction for 2-hour floors always being required unless you carry it through to the floor sheathing above the rating. In the case of platform construction, where the floor typically rests on the exterior wall and supports the exterior wall portion above it, then that would be that would be difficult to accomplish. So thank you. Thank you.
Further opposition? Larry?
Larry Wainwright, SBCA. He basically just took my testimony, but I'll point out that FS20, which comes up next, actually solves this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Further opposition? Seeing none, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, is there a motion for FS19-18?
Motion for disapproval.
It's been moved and seconded for disapproval. Comments, Mr. Richardson?
Yeah, there's just a number of concerns with the limitations in the start and the stop of the exterior wall, particularly related to the foundation and or the floor, and then the other concern that's been raised about at least the support up through the 1-hour floor ceiling assembly. 704.1 requires elements that support a rated wall to be of the same rating, and those structural elements in the floor system that would support, let's say, a 2-hour wall above would need to be 2 hours rated, at least where they provide that support.
Thank you. Further comments? You good? Okay, seeing no further comments, the motion on the floor for FS19-18 is for disapproval. Those in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Those opposed? That motion carries by a vote of 14-0. Mr. Moderator, FS19-18 has been disapproved.
FS19 is recommended for disapproval, 14-0. Is there a floor action? Seeing none.